18 months ago, I got rid of these orthotics after almost 20 years of wearing them. And I replaced them with these, a pair of Vivo Barefoot shoes. But 18 months later, it's back to these I go. And in this video, I'm gonna explain why. So firstly, a little bit about my journey. And so it started around when I was about 12 years old. And I used to play a lot of sport, and in particular, tennis very seriously. But when I was 12 years old, I started getting like a bad case of plantar fasciitis in my feet. And so I saw a podiatrist, and I was told, and I am still told, that I've got a fallen arch, I'm an overpronator, and that my feet stick out a little bit. And so when I was 12 years old, I was told I need orthotics, and I got orthotics. And then for almost about 20 years, I have worn orthotics. And it was kind of okay, you know, wearing the orthotics, it did get me out of pain, and I didn't really have too many problems throughout the years. I had like little things that I did question whether the orthotics might be causing, but generally it wasn't too bad. But about 2.5 years ago, I started, I guess, learning a little bit more about kind of whether you actually need orthotics, and I started learning more about Vivo Barefoot shoes and really just started questioning things a little bit more. And I was then actually experiencing a lot more aches and pains in like my knee, my back, my hip. I had all sorts of aches and pains, and I wasn't sure if these were directly because of the orthotics, but I did question it. And ultimately, about 1.5 years ago, in February of last year, in 2024, I decided to completely ditch my orthotics in all of my shoes, because I used to wear orthotics in everything, so I was getting rid of them in all of my shoes, and I decided to start wearing the Vivo Barefoot shoes. And I decided to just wear the barefoot shoes for all of my gym activities, for all my exercise in the gym, and then just for some other like daily things, and you know, particularly if I was just like going for walks and things like that. And so what happened when I made this transition of getting rid of the orthotics and wearing the barefoot shoes? Well, one thing that did happen is that quite quickly I started getting this really quite bad pain in my left knee. And the left knee was one of the original pains that I had been experiencing for a while, but this pain was actually different to that an original pain, and it was quite a lot worse. It was this like real pain in the top of my tendon, just above my kneecap. And almost the worst part was that whenever I was sitting, I would start getting this like really burning sensation in my knee, and it would come on quite quickly from when I was sitting, and that was quite like a debilitating one in some respects. I also started getting pain in my Achilles, and running is something that I like to do a lot of, but whenever I would run for any sort of long distance, I'd really start getting this Achilles pain as well, which was you know, quite difficult for me, and it was starting to really prevent me from being able to run and do some of the things that I wanted to do in terms of running. And then the third like main thing I'd say is that I also started getting this hip pain, like in my right hip. That came on about 6 months after I made this transition, but again, it was something as well that I was really struggling with. And because I started getting these pains, you know, very quickly, I, amongst all of that, started seeing a physio, and pretty much for this whole like 1.5 year period, I've been seeing a physio on basically all of those areas that I said, my knee, my Achilles, and my hip. And so I really have been working to try and strengthen those areas and improve things. I've been doing, you know, all sorts of different exercises for my knee. I've been doing like calf raises and every variation for my Achilles, lots of mobility work for my hip. And almost the most baffling part actually about all of this is that my strength and my mobility, I think, really has improved. Like I corrected my squat stance a lot, and I've got a much better squat technique now, and like I can get real depth on my squat, and just, yeah, my hip mobility generally is a lot better, and all kind of my mobility in my lower body seems to be better, as well as the strength, as I said. And that's what I mean is kind of the baffling part, because despite that, I was still just getting all of these pains, and I just couldn't actually get rid of the pains themselves. As well as that, I also just liked not wearing the orthotics. I mean, it was a lot more convenient for me to not have to wear them. And I also really kind of did, I think, like the barefoot shoes. Like particularly in the gym, I felt like I was able to get a lot more like depth on my squat and just be more mobile in my barefoot shoes. And I think they were helping to like strengthen some areas. And that was, again, like the weird part, like some of the other aches and pains that I was experiencing before I made this transition, some of those did stop. Like my lower back pain that I was getting before was a lot better. And so it was this like weird combination of some things getting better, but then having some of these other issues that I was still really struggling with. And so where am I at now with it all? Well, whilst, as I said, some of the aches and pains have got better and my strength has got better and my mobility has got better, the three main things that I mentioned, my knee, my Achilles and my hip, I just can't seem to get rid of. I can't get out of these pains. And I mean, like the knee one, as I said, it is quite debilitating. Like particularly I can just be like at a restaurant or something and I can barely sit still for like 5 minutes. The Achilles has really been stopping me from pursuing some of the running goals that I want. And my hip is just this kind of like constant aching pain. And as I said, I've tried to work on these things and strengthen them, but ultimately I have succumbed and I have decided that I am gonna just go back to wearing orthotics. Not these actually orthotics, these were my old ones, and I've got casted for a new pair of orthotics, which are gonna be ready in about a week's time. And then from there, I will be wearing orthotics once more. And so what are my next steps and really like general thoughts from it all? Well, as I said, I will be going back to wearing orthotics. And I think I just want to get sort of out of these pains that I'm in terms of my knee, my Achilles and my hip. And I just want to get back to like a baseline level where I'm generally not having any of these pains, fingers crossed. From there, I'm not exactly sure like what I'm going to do. I need to discuss this, I guess, with my podiatrist that I'm seeing, because at the moment I'm not even sure, like, will I wear my orthotics in everything or will it only be for certain things? So I need to figure that all out. But my immediate thoughts is that, as I said, I'd like to get back to like a baseline of level of no real pain. And then from there, I don't want to be wearing orthotics forever. And so I think I'd maybe like to try doing like a really slow transition this time out of them, like once I'm back at that baseline level of no pain. And I would say that's clearly something that I did very wrong in the transition that I tried to make, because as I said, I was wearing orthotics for 20 plus years. And so to just literally go from that to then not wearing them in anything and wearing barefoot shoes, that probably was a little bit stupid and quite an extreme transition. And so if I was to try and transition out of the orthotics this time, I would try to do it in a much slower, more measured way. Like maybe to start with, it would just be, I wouldn't wear my orthotics for certain things, and then I could kind of increase more and more the amount of things that I don't wear the orthotics in. And even the barefoot shoes themselves, I think I should have been a lot more measured how I wore those. Like I should have just worn them for like less periods of time to start with and not as frequently as I was. And maybe like for certain exercises, I shouldn't have worn them when I was to start with. And so I think that is the biggest learning, that like if you're trying to do one of these sort of transitions out of orthotics, or even just when you're starting to wear barefoot shoes for the first time, be like very slow and measured in your approach in terms of what you're doing in that regard. And even in terms of the barefoot shoes themselves, like, I'm not actually going to talk badly about the barefoot shoes, because as I said, I did like wearing them, and maybe even in this next period, maybe like I can still wear the orthotics in the barefoot shoes and kind of get some benefit still from wearing them. And as I said, maybe then I can like more slowly transition out of the orthotics and into barefoot shoes more regularly again. What I would say is that this experience, it has left me a little bit uncertain about orthotics, about cushion shoes and barefoot shoes. And I think like, particularly online, like orthotics and cushion shoes, they've really almost been demonized, I think, of late. And I'll be honest, like I bought into that, and I kind of still have almost bought into the philosophy, like surely you shouldn't have to wear orthotic shoes. And I can see the benefits of barefoot shoes versus super cushion shoes. However, I'm not sure if like orthotics and cushion shoes being demonized like they are is completely fair now based on the experiences that I've had. And what I would say is that I think there probably are circumstances where maybe people do just need more cushion shoes, and maybe people do need orthotics even. And like, I think circumstances can probably be very different. I don't know if it's always, black and white in this regard. Like for me, obviously I had worn orthotics for 20 odd years. And so I'm sure like my body had got some changes because of that and had got so used to orthotics. And so maybe for me, it really was going to be hard to stop wearing orthotics, and maybe it really will just be impossible for me. And I think like my situation is probably very different to someone, say, like if you're in your 20s or 30s and you've just started getting some foot pain and you're getting told maybe orthotics are what you need. Like in that situation, I wouldn't rush to get orthotics, and I probably really would work to try and just like strengthen some of those areas instead and see if you can move forward without the orthotics. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think everyone's situations is different, and for some people I think like the barefoot route and not wearing orthotics, that definitely can be like the right path forward, and I think is maybe the path that you should really try, at least firstly if you can. But for other people, I think they probably do just need more cushion shoes. Like maybe because of their structure, they do need more cushion, they do need support, and in some circumstances like barefoot shoes, it won't be appropriate, and even orthotics may be what you need. And at the moment, I'm kind of in limbo, I guess, where I stand. Well, I mean, I guess at the moment, I'm more in favor of thinking I do need the orthotics. But as I said, I'm gonna go back to those orthotics, see how I get on, and then we'll go from there. And if you are interested, I can do another update video to kind of let you know how I get on once I've started wearing the new orthotics more regularly, and then my plan going forwards from there. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.